Welcome back to the Didn't Ask podcast. I'm your host Djimon, and today I will be diving back into the world of Reddit to see what the people asked Reddit and didn't ask me. Wow, welcome back, baby. It feels like a very long time since I've done this podcast. While it hasn't been, it has been exactly a week since I've been here, but still, it feels like way and way longer. I'm coming in with a new type of energy today. I've been going through some medical things, got some new medicine. They're giving me a little bit more of a headache, which is fucking annoying, but they seem to be working, and I am very happy with that. So that's why the energy is up today, ladies and gentlemen, listeners of the Didn't Ask podcast. I hope you had a good week. Like you can hear, I had a pretty good week as well. Sadly, there was no Formula 1 this weekend, but you know what was this weekend? WrestleMania. Holy shit, the fucking kingpin, the crown jewel, if you will, of wrestling was this past weekend, and man, did I enjoy that shit. WrestleMania Saturday was absolutely amazing. We saw Charlotte Flair, my queen, the love of my life, my future wife, win and retain her title at WrestleMania over Ronda Rousey. Something that I kind of guessed actually going in. Like normally I'm always very much betting up against Charlotte because that's what you should do when you like something. You should bet against them because if you bet against them, you win regardless. Because either you win the bet because the opponent wins and then you're happy because of that, even though you're still kind of sad because your favorite lost. But if your favorite does win, you don't get the bet, but your favorite wins. So it's a kind of a win-win situation if you bet against your favorite. Pro tip from me. But she retained her title and I'm very happy with that. There were some wardrobe malfunctions, which we don't like that, but it happens. You know, this is wrestling. People rub against each other and grab each other and things slip and slide and yeah, shit happens. But it caused the screen to go black for about 10 seconds during that match. But anyways, this is not a podcast where I review WWE, but that might be an option for the future. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? This is a podcast where I, Djimon, dive into the world of Reddit to see what the people asked Reddit and didn't ask me. So let's jump into the first question of the day, coming from the AskReddit subreddit, and it's almost asked by user AskReddit, and they ask, what tastes good both cold and hot? And to me, I immediately jump to drinks for some sort of reason, and specifically Starbucks drinks, because of course Starbucks offers a shit ton of drinks and a shit ton of combinations, but you can also get most drinks both cold and hot. And I say most drinks because of course they do cold brews and you cannot get cold brews hot because that don't make sense. That don't make sense, fam. But there are many other things that you can get hot or cold, like caramel macchiatos or chai lattes and stuff like that. But then I thought like, well, I don't really like iced chai lattes because iced chai lattes just taste too sweet. For some sort of reason, if you get it cold, you just taste the sugar. It's fucking outrageous. I don't know why, but if you get it hot, you get the nice spice of the chai. So that's why I prefer that one hot. And if you look over to the opposite side, something that I already mentioned, a caramel macchiato. I like a caramel macchiato hot and cold, I guess, but for me, the caramel macchiato, it's basically the opposite of the chai latte, where I basically like the cold version more than I like the hot version. So with that, I basically went through all the options here in my head at the time. So I went like, well, what is the other thing that tastes good both warm and cold? And the only thing that's basically left is just food overall. And there are many foods that you can eat both hot and cold. But then I thought of one specific thing, a specific thing that I've been craving for a couple of days. Apple pie. There is, in my opinion, nothing better than a good apple pie. And an apple pie, you can eat both hot and cold, and both versions taste fucking amazing. Because if you get an apple pie that's fresh out of the oven, it's still like mushy on the inside and hot, and the apples just ooh, and the cinnamon, man, dude, it's fantastic. But if I get an apple pie for myself, I just put it in the fridge and cut off a slice after dinner or, during tea or whatever. And then I have a cold apple pie, and both fucking taste amazing. So, going back to the question asked by user AskReddit, what tastes good both cold and hot? And while I went for drinks first, I think I have to go with the answer apple pie, because an apple pie is good wherever you can get one. Thank you for your question, AskReddit. Moving on to the second question of today, coming from the AskReddit subreddit from user DirtySimp19, and they ask, what is the most and why the fuck do you know that fact? Well, I already talked a little bit about WWE in the beginning of this podcast, and one thing that I am really good at, and I don't know why, is basically remembering like wrestling moments. So there are many times where I just think and then just go, oh, the winner of this Royal Rumble was this person, or the main event of WrestleMania this year was that person. I don't know why I do know these things, and they're completely useless. But yeah, it is one of those things that I think just because of the sheer amount of wrestling that I've watched over the last 10 years, I guess, it's just been absolutely outrageous. And some things I have forgotten, but some things I do know. And sometimes it feels weird where you kind of feel like you know the answer and are 100% sure about that, but then you cannot verify the answer. And that is sometimes really weird, especially in WWE, where, you have superstars that come in and then are there for a couple of years, but then leave and then go to another company, and then WWE basically erases their memory and, moves on. So sometimes that's a bit weird, but yeah, I feel like I know many wrestling things, and it's fucking weird to start saying that now. Like I cannot specifically name something, but I normally like am able to just think back like, oh, if WrestleMania 30 was in New Orleans, then that means that WrestleMania 31 was in Santa Clara / San Francisco, and then 32 was Dallas, because that was the biggest WrestleMania there ever was. But then and I can basically just go on and on and on about that shit. And again, it's just the sheer amount of stuff that I have watched. And I noticed this with myself, like watching this year's Royal Rumble, where I just went, oh, hey, like Summer Rae came back, for example. And I immediately went, oh, well, Summer Rae had a group with Charlotte and Sasha Banks. They were called the BFFs, and shit like that just immediately popped in my head. And I just went on blabbering about it, because those are things that are just stuck in there. And I don't know why. I don't know. I don't need them, because WWE doesn't even fucking use that shit. And if they do, they just explain it once again. So there is no real reason for me to keep track of who was in what faction and who are friends with who, and I don't know. But yeah, that would probably be the answer to you, Dirty Simp 19. What is the most and why the fuck do you know that fact? And I guess it's just WWE knowledge. Again, over the last 10 years that I've been watching wrestling, I've picked up many things, and sometimes I even remember people's theme songs and stuff like that they have not used in many years. So yeah, I think that would be the why the fuck do you know that fact for me. Just basically WWE knowledge, from WrestleMania entrances to outfits that they wore to whatever. I know a lot. Thank you for your question, Dirty Simp. Moving on to the third question of today, coming from user Frins_Philip. Pretty good. Non-Australians. What's the first thing that comes to your head when you think of Australia? Simple answer to this question is Kangaroo Jack. Like, for some sort of reason, Kangaroo Jack has been ingrained in my head, and I don't know why it's there. Like, I know that I've seen the movie when I was a kid with my dad, and the movie itself wasn't even a kids movie. And this is a funny story that the Funhouse people said. I think it was James Williams from Funhouse on the Funhouse podcast. They went like on a complete diatribe on why Kangaroo Jack has been popular with some generation, even though it wasn't necessarily for that generation. And that's really funny to me. And basically, what it comes down to is that Kangaroo Jack was a movie that was just an adult movie, basically. But then they realized that, hey, they can speak to kids in some way. So they showed a scene in the trailer that was actually like a dream sequence, but it made it seem like it was a kids movie, and therefore it got labeled as a kids movie. Well, it's literally about drug smuggling, I believe, something like that. So it's a bit of a weird fucking thing that kids saw that movie and kids like myself saw that movie. But for some sort of reason, that has been in my head for ever, actually, just thinking about Australia. And the second thing that I think about when I think about Australia, even though that was not the question, but I think about Blinky Bill. And Blinky Bill was a cartoon that we had back in the day where there was this kid, Blinky Bill, that was a koala, and he had like a pullover type thing. He basically looked like Mario, but then he had one of the clasps of his like working pants he had untied or something like that. For some other reason, I remember that. I don't know why, but yeah, Blinky Bill was such a important cartoon for me somehow because I just really liked it. So I just watched it a lot. So that's the second thing that I think about when I think of Australia. It's Blinky Bill, and I watched Blinky Bill, and I played a Blinky Bill game, I believe, as well. I don't know why. I something like that pops in my head. I don't know if that's actually true or not, if I have the game, yes or no, but I feel like there was a game. So, going back to your question, user Friends underscore Philip, non-Australians, what's the first thing that comes to your head when you think of Australia? And for me, it's probably just Kangaroo Jack, because of course kangaroos are very Australian, and that movie for some sort of reason has been ingrained in my head with fucking stupid kangaroo wearing a red hoodie and has sunglasses for no fucking reason. And the second thing, even though that's not your question, but would be Blinky Bill, because, Blinky Bill. And of course, you think about the accents, but that's, fucking weird, because you get raise up lights. Raise up lights. Oi, mate. Okay, thank you for your question, Prince Philip. Moving on to the fourth question of today, coming from user Person Boots. And they ask, what TV show cancellation do you think was undeserved? I have talked about canceled shows in the past on this show right here. And there are many shows that I loved watching and got canceled. Most notably, I would say, is Constantine for me. It was canceled so quickly. They did one season of that show and they immediately canceled it. And it was also like a short season, I believe, from the top of my head. I think it were like 10 episodes. And then they cut the show. And to me, it was such a bummer, because Constantine the show was so fucking cool. Like, it had everything that you want nowadays in a TV show. It had like it was like R-rated, I believe. So there was like shit, fucks, and whatever. People got, of course, it was demons and spells and shit like that. People got fucking cut in pieces, and I don't fucking know. But yeah, it was such a fun show, and I think that, of course, like I mentioned on here before, is that Constantine was one of my favorite shows when it aired, and it was so sad that the show got canceled. But then eventually they got the actor Matt Ryan to portray Constantine again, but then in Legends of Tomorrow. And in there, you can see many traits of the Constantine show being brought over to Legends of Tomorrow. It's still not the same, but in many ways it is, and it does scratch that itch that you have for me for Constantine. But I still would have loved to see how that story would have unfolded and how he would have gotten to Astra and stuff like that. Like, would he gotten to Astra? Could he saved her? Stuff like that. Again, now in Legends of Tomorrow, we do know that Astra is a real human being now. She is grown up and doing cool things, looking hot, doing it, and being a boss ass bitch because she fucking ruled over hell, which is fucking dope as fuck. But yeah, that was one of the shows that I really think was sad that got cancelled. Another show that I really got bummed about that it got cancelled was Glow. Glow was such a fun show for me because it combined so many different things that I liked, but also gave people like a look into wrestling. And that was what made Glow such a interesting and fun show, is that yeah, it felt kind of like a outside looking in view of what the wrestling community is like, what the wrestling world is like, why people like wrestling, both on the performance side but also on the audience side. And it was such a fun show with such real, like it had real emotions in my opinion. Like and of course it was also pretty it was pretty ballsy as well. And we have seen that Netflix has been stepping away slightly more from like the hard R rated content. A very good example is Witcher in this case, where in the first season of Witcher we saw boobs and vaginas and bush and whatever the fuck and ass. And in the second season we didn't see any of that, and they cut around it very quickly and smartly. So I feel like a lot of that would go missing because legitimately in the first episode, I believe, of Glow, you see Alison Brie just naked and you see like other performers naked and stuff like that. So I feel like that is also one of the reasons probably that it got canceled. But yeah, I feel like it's very sad that that show got canceled as well, because there was so much potential still in that show and there was so many things that they still could have done, and it's sad that they couldn't get the ending that they wanted, because now the ending is basically like a cliffhanger where they go like, oh, we're going to Vegas because we're going to do a residency there, and then it just stops. So I think it's sad that we never got an ending to that show. So going back to your question, Purse and Boots, what TV show cancellation do you think was undeserved? First off, Constantine, the show had one season and got cancelled, which is super sad because again, it didn't get the opportunity to showcase what it could be and what it could do. And two, for me, it would be Glow, more so because it didn't get the ending they deserved as a show, because they did very well and then all of a sudden Netflix just cancelled it, and still don't really know why they did that. Thank you for your question anyways, Birds and Boots. And now moving on to the final question of the Ask Reddit subreddit for today, and this one coming from Nilk's Mouth. And they ask, if dogs are man's best friend, which animal is a man's mortal enemy? While many people would probably jump to cats, I don't think that cats are a man's mortal enemy, because I think that cats are super underrated in the sense that I think that cats are more like humans and then humans actually want them to be. And I think that that's why dogs are so popular under people, even though I think there are probably more people with cats than with dogs, but that's fine. Because I feel like a dog is actually a pet, you know what I mean? It is your pet. It does basically what you want if you train it well enough. And then, it does its thing. But a cat is very much on its own. And I feel like, again, a cat is very much more similar to a human. And that's why I feel like there is a clash there. But I looked at the comments of this post, and the first comment was probably the best one, and that was basically where my head got stuck at when I was reading this question. And this one comes from user Smegma Laden Mini Horse. Okay. Why the fuck do I read these names? And they said mosquitoes. And I would say, yeah, that's probably a very good answer here because, of course, mosquitoes, fucking annoying. If you have them in your bedroom while you're trying to sleep, you can't because you just hear the zoom in and just going. And that's just fucking annoying. And then it takes our blood to produce more of them. But then you also have, of course, malaria carrying mosquitoes. And then you can get sick from that and you can get seriously sick from that. So, yeah, I would say Smegma Laden Mini Horse. Mosquitoes is probably the right answer here. So going back to the question asked by user Nilk's Mouth. If dogs are man's best friend, what animal is man's mortal enemy? And I would also say, like Smegma Laden Mini Horse said, mosquitoes. They're fucking annoying. They prick us for no fucking real reason. Even though, of course, they need to eat and stuff like that and reproduce. But why the fuck would you hit us? Fuck off. And then they keep us awake at night and then they can give us disease. And there are so many people that died from malaria and stuff like that. So yeah, mosquitoes are a human's mortal enemy. Thank you for your question. And now, moving on to the final question of today, coming from the Am I the Asshole subreddit from user Trora2433, and they ask, am I the asshole for making a joke about my brother's affair at his wedding? When I was in elementary school, I was the type of kid who got disrupts class often on their report card, so I never focused much on school. My district had this system where you would pair high schoolers with younger kids to help them with school, etc., and my mom made me do that after I kept getting in trouble. So my tutor was a freshman, Abby. She would come over to our house after school to help me with my homework or something, I barely remember. My brother John was the same age as Abby, so they would talk to each other and ended up dating. She stopped tutoring me officially after like a month, but since she was at our house a lot, I also talked to Abby a lot and we were really close. Fast forward 10 years, Abby and John got married and had a kid together. 5 years later, John tells me he's getting a divorce because he's met someone new. It sucked because I liked John and Abby together a lot, but whatever. Then he tells me he had an affair with his new girlfriend. Also sucked, and I told him he shouldn't have hurt Abby like that, but whatever. I also asked Abby how she was doing, and she wasn't doing well, but she didn't want her to be the reason I had a bad relationship with my brother. However, 2 months before the wedding, Abby calls me and tells me that my brother's girlfriend has been harassing her nonstop. She showed me the text, and his girlfriend was saying some pretty disturbing things about how she's so much better than Abby, taunting Abby for having to share custody of her kid now, etc. Just making fun of her and bullying her. I told my brother about this and he said that he would ask his girlfriend about it. About a month later, I asked him if he ever brought it up and he said he did, but saw nothing wrong with the text, which pissed me off. I confirmed that he saw the same text that I saw. Abby apologized for involving me in the whole thing in the first place and encouraged me to still go to the wedding where my brother asked me to make a speech. The speech went well until I made a joke. The gist of the joke was me turning to his new wife and telling her that if she's learned anything from this, she should know that my brother will never let his wife stop him from finding the love of his life. This got my brother and his wife really mad, and they kicked me out shortly after, and my brother has been calling, texting me nonstop, yelling at me. TLDR, made a joke about my brother's affair. Am I the asshole? It was quite a bit of a story here, but it is a very much a interesting point and an interesting story at the very least to tell. Because man, I don't really know what the real right answer is. Are you an asshole for making that joke? Yeah, because it shows first off that you're brother is a cheater. And of course, it's a weird thing to say that at a wedding. Is the joke funny? Yes, it's pretty funny, and I probably would have made a similar joke if I was in your situation. But yeah, you probably should not have made that joke. Maybe one of those jokes could be like funny, when you're at like a birthday party or maybe like a wedding anniversary after like a couple of years, then you can make that joke and that's kind of funny. But doing it on the wedding night is a bit of an asshole move there. So yeah, I would say that you're the asshole, but I do get where you're coming from. And again, I probably would have made a similar joke in the past. So I would say you're the asshole, I guess. Even though clearly we can also use another fucking thing here that you're not the asshole, but everyone is the asshole. So let's just say that. We're going to just say everybody is the asshole because your brother is the asshole for cheating on his wife, on his first wife. And then your new sister-in-law, I guess, is an asshole for harassing the ex-wife. And then you're the asshole for making that joke at the wedding. Even though it was a funny joke, and again, I probably would have made a similar joke myself. So, going back to the question asked by user Trora2433, am I the asshole for making a joke about my brother's affair at his wedding? I would say yes, you're the asshole, but again, everybody here is the asshole because 1, you made a stupid joke at your brother's wedding that you probably should not have made. 2, your brother is a fucking asshole for cheating on his wife. You should never do that. And 3, the new sister-in-law or the new wife of your brother is an asshole for harassing the ex-wife. So everyone is the asshole in this situation. And that has been it for the Didn't Ask podcast for this week. I hope you had a good time. If you did, please leave a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts because both platforms allow you to leave reviews, which help me in the algorithm. And if you know the internet, and you know that algorithms are fucking weird. So please leave a rating if you really enjoyed this show. You can find this podcast on all your favorite podcast services, or you can go to anchor.fm/didn't-ask-pod. Over here, you can find all the hyperlinks to your favorite podcast platforms, like Podcast Addict, like Pocket Cast. It's all there. Just go up and look. But over here, you can also find a box that says message, and over there, when you press it, you get the ability to record a voice message for me with your personal question, asking me what you want. If you don't want your voice to be heard on this podcast, I completely understand. Just say it upfront in your message, then I will read your question out myself so you still get your question answered. I will be back next week, and in the meantime, you can see what I'm watching on track.tv. That link will be in the show description. Over here, you can get a sometimes live, view of all the shows and movies and stuff that I'm watching at the time. So it's also fun to go back and see what movies I've watched, like Moonstruck, or like Colorado Space, or like Anaconda. And you can ask me questions about that, because that would be fun too. Well, that was it for me for this week. I hope to see you back next week. Take good care of yourself. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.